Under President Trump, the United States has zero tolerance for foreign visitors who support terrorism. Violators of U.S. law, including international students, will continue to face visa denial or revocation and deportation. And illegal alien criminals will continue to be arrested and deported from our country.
When you look at these last-minute Biden pardons, Biden siblings, Fauci, January 6th committee.
That's right.
Most of the big ones have the same very neat signature. There is one that looks different, that looks authentic. Is this White House of the opinion that the only pardon that would count is one that the president signed himself?
And who was running the country for the past 4 years? The American people deserve answers. Again, the question is not, was the auto pen used? It's whether or not the President of the United States knew it was being used, which is clearly illegal behavior.
He's saying he'll be revoking visas of certain Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party. Does that include sons and daughters of politicians, presidents, and chairmen?
So a Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson today said that the U.S. imposed harmful measures like new chip controls and pledging to revoke Chinese student visas. So are the Chinese the victims in this trade back and forth?
I don't think anyone is the victim. These are two strong countries. And Ryan.
Seems inappropriate though now that this is serious business, as you talked about.
It's serious business, and I'm not going to engage in such fodder with a question like that. Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? Good. It's good to see all of you. I want to start by addressing the horrific act of violence that took place on Sunday in Boulder, Colorado. President Trump and the entire administration's hearts go out to the victims, and they are in our prayers during this unimaginable time. According to reporting from Fox News, the alleged attacker admitted in an interview that he wanted to kill all Zionist people and had been planning the attack for over a year and would do it again if he could. This monster used a makeshift flamethrower and Molotov cocktails to light Jewish Americans on fire in an attempt to burn them alive. The victims at the incident location in Boulder were there to rally in support of Israeli hostages who remain in Hamas captivity. 12 were injured, including a Holocaust survivor. This is pure evil. The President Trump sounded the alarm over these reckless Biden policies for years because this is the predictable result of letting anti-American radicals and illegal immigrants pour into our country. Immigration security is national security. And that's why the Trump administration, at the direction of our great president, has secured our border, strengthened our immigration system, and has taken immediate steps to protect the United States from foreign terrorists and other public safety threats. Under President Trump, the United States has zero tolerance for foreign visitors who support terrorism. Violators of U.S. law, including international students, will continue to face visa denial or revocation and deportation. And illegal alien criminals will continue to be arrested and deported from our country. On the topic of immigration, the Washington Post just ran one of the most ridiculous headlines ever, even by their standards. And on my very first briefing several months ago, I said I would hold anyone accountable in this room. The Washington Post actually had this headline: the mysterious drop in fentanyl seizures on the U.S.-Mexico border. How is this mysterious? There is no mystery about why there is a decrease in fentanyl coming into the United States. This administration's strong border policies are the reason there has been a decrease in fentanyl trafficking. His strengthened relationship with Mexican President Sheinbaum and all of the measures he has been taking to deter illegal human and drug trafficking at our United States southern border is the reason for plummeting fentanyl seizures at the U.S. border. There is nothing mysterious about that, and we'd like to see the Washington Post update their headline accordingly. This is clearly trying to intentionally manipulate the minds of the Americans, and I think the American people understand why there's been a fentanyl drop. And our office responded to this inquiry. We provided a whole host of the reasons that fentanyl seizures at the southern border have dropped, and the Washington Post refused to run them, and that's despicable. And we have just the news in our new media seat today. Amanda Head, thank you for being with us. Why don't you kick us off?
Sure, thank you so much. There is a disturbing trend of anti-Semitism turning into terrorism. Of course, the Boulder, Colorado instance that you just mentioned, the 2 Israeli embassy staffers who were murdered, Pennsylvania governor's mansion with the Jewish governor inside getting set on fire. Does the president consider this domestic terrorism? And as such, are there official alerts to law enforcement, BOLOs, task forces, things like that?
The president has made it very clear, as he said in his statement yesterday, that yes, these anti-Semitic acts of violence are do qualify as terrorism, and he does not want to see terrorism or violence of any form taking place in the United States of America. And this president will stand up for Americans of all religions, of all faiths, of all creeds, and we will continue to look at policy measures and actions that we can take in addition to the actions that have already been taken to curb this anti-Semitic violence. And to Jewish Americans at home, across the country, this president has your back. Thank you. Kelly.
Good afternoon. We're now in hurricane season, and obviously there is great concern every year about the potential for that. Can you speak to how the president is planning to have the level of support, should it be needed, to be as it has been with a reduction in the workforce? And is he still comfortable with Administrator Richardson, who had talked, whether joking or not, about not being aware of a hurricane season for this country? What is the president's level of briefings on what may be required? If you could give us kind of an overall update on that.
Sure. Well, of course, we know that we are into hurricane season now, and I know FEMA is taking this seriously, contrary to some of the reporting we have seen based on jokes that were made and leaks from meetings. But Secretary Kristi Noem and the FEMA leadership are all over this. However, this president has made it clear we're not going to enable states to make bad decisions with federal tax dollars and then have the federal government later have to bail these states out. We want to see states be responsible with their tax dollars to do as much as they possibly can, and then the president will deeply and thoughtfully consider any requests for federal aid that come to his desk. And I think some of the media reporting we've seen on this is frankly sloppy and irresponsible. There are serious people who are taking this issue seriously, starting with the president himself, who, as you know, on his first domestic trip back in office, visited both North Carolina and California, both of which were, of course, hit by natural disasters when he wasn't even president, but he took ownership of that and visited those places and those people immediately.
Is it
Brian?
about hurricane season appropriate, though, now that this is serious business, as you talked about?
It's serious business, Kelly, and I'm not going to engage in such fodder with a question like that. Jonathan, go ahead.
Thank you. Does President Trump approve of Ukraine's decision to strike nuclear-capable bombers in Russia?
I would like to let the president speak on that himself.
And just a follow-up, has the president...
I would just add to that. The president does not want to see this war prolonged. He wants the fighting to stop. He wants people to stop dying, and he wants this to be solved at the negotiating table. The reason he is so deeply involved and has spent so much time and effort on this war is because he hates to see people dying. Again, these are not Americans that are being killed. These are Russians and these are Ukrainians. This is a war very far away. But this president truly cares about peace, and that's what he wants to see.
What is President Trump doing to ensure that a similar internal drone attack doesn't happen here in the US, given this was done at pretty low cost, very stealthily? You know, it obviously raises questions about our own security, particularly for US aircraft here.
It absolutely does. And that's why the president nominated Secretary Hegseth and has approved some of the changes that have been made at the Pentagon to ensure that we have the most lethal fighting force in the world and that the United States military is the best, the biggest. That's why he wants the One Big Beautiful Bill to be passed, because it increases our defense spending. It's why he also launched the announcement of the Golden Dome to prevent from missile strikes and attacks in the future. And Caitlin.
On the Big Beautiful Bill, you said recently that it is, quote, blatantly wrong to say that it adds to the deficit. You essentially said that an estimate from the Congressional Budget Office and other scorekeepers you believe are wrong. But Republicans like Ron Johnson and Rand Paul disagree. They are saying that it will add to the deficit. That is their concern. Is the White House's position that those two Republican senators are, quote, blatantly wrong?
It is. Those senators, it's not news that they disagree with this president on policy, and the president has vocally called them out for it and for their not having their facts together. I would add the Congressional Budget Office has been historically wrong. And I would also point out, I don't think many people know this, there hasn't been a single staffer in the entire Congressional Budget Office that has contributed to a Republican since the year 2000. But guess what? There have been many staffers within the Congressional Budget Office who have contributed to Democrat candidates and politicians every single cycle since. So unfortunately, this is an institution in our country that has become partisan partisan and political, and we are very confident in our own economic analyses of this bill. There is $1.6 trillion in savings, and our Office of Management and Budget Director, Russ Vought, is a fiscal hawk. He is well known in this city for being a well-respected fiscal hawk. He has tools at his disposal to produce even more savings. And as you know, the White House will be sending our rescissions package to Capitol Hill today. Jeff.
Caroline, is the United States putting pressure on China to release its hold on rare earths that are hurting car companies and technology companies now that require that for their products? And is that pressure working?
Well, I can assure you that the administration is actively monitoring China's compliance with the Geneva Trade Agreement. I know the United States, on our end, we have complied with the terms that we set, and our administration officials continue to be engaged in correspondence with their Chinese counterparts. And as you all know, and I know there's a lot of interest in it, there will be a leader-to-leader talk very soon. And when that happens, as always, we will let you know. Haley, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline.
And then to Kelly next to you.
Thank you. When it comes to the leader-to-leader call with Xi Jinping this week, what is the president's expectation of this call? Is he looking for concrete outcomes out of this, or is he looking to kind of warm relations as these trade talks are ongoing?
Well, President Trump and President Xi have shared a respectful relationship throughout the years. And again, I won't get ahead of the president on that call, but as always, after, you'll hear directly from the president or from myself or someone else here at the White House. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. When you look at these last-minute Biden pardons, the big ones, Biden siblings, Fauci, January 6th committee.
That's right.
Most of the big ones have the same very neat signature. We would expect that probably to be the auto pen. There is one that looks different. It looks authentic. In fact, if you look at the last name, it almost looks like the president was having a hard time spelling his last name there. Is this White House of the opinion that the only pardon that would count is one that the president signed himself?
It's very interesting. Very interesting props. If you want to bring them to my office later so I can take a closer look, I would like to do that. The president is making a good point when he discusses the usage of the auto pen. Who was running the country for the past 4 years? Perhaps those documents were signed with the auto pen, something that this, I believe the Department of Justice is looking into. As you saw, Ed Martin made an announcement at the Department of Justice this morning to launch an investigation because the American people deserve answers.
Is there any concern that this president, who won the election on a promise to fix the economy and close the border, that focusing and scrutinizing these Biden pardons is looking into the past instead of looking forward?
I think in comparison to the amount of time this president has spent on securing the border, on fixing our economy, I just read out for you an entire list of economic accomplishments. Look at the border numbers, look at the time and effort he's divulged into solving the global conflicts abroad. It pales in comparison, but it still, nevertheless, is a very important issue. And it was a huge issue that sent the president back to this White House. The Americans saw with their own eyes a mentally incompetent president, and they want answers for that. And the president believes they should have
And
them.
something that just
Go
crossed
ahead.
Caroline, how mad do you think President Trump is going to be when he finds out that Elon Musk said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it.
Also, it's a second question. If the DOJ finds that the auto pen was used by President Biden, should those actions that were used with the auto pen, should they be null and void?
I'm not going to get ahead of the Department of Justice's investigation into the usage of the auto pen. And the question is not, was the auto pen used? It's whether or not the president of the United States knew it was being used. And if not, who was using it in his name, which is clearly illegal behavior.
Absolutely. And also, Secretary of State Rubio made an announcement saying he'll be revoking visas of certain Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party. Does that include sons and daughters of politicians, presidents, and chairmen?
Again, Secretary of State Rubio has the right to revoke visas, and he made the announcement that the State Department will begin to aggressively revoke those visas of Chinese students who are in our country, namely those with Chinese Communist Party ties, or those who could be a threat to our national security and the interests of the United States. To both of you, yeah, go ahead and then back to you.
Thank you. There are now reports that Israeli forces are firing on Palestinians trying to get aid from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Up to 20 people, according to the Red Cross, have arrived to the hospital that they've set up with gunshot wounds, have died from them. Is this administration aware of these? And I mean, what is being done to address this situation?
The administration is aware of those reports, and we are currently looking into the veracity of them because, unfortunately, unlike some in the media, we don't take the word of Hamas with total truth. We like to look into it when they speak. Unlike the BBC, who had multiple headlines, they wrote, Israeli tank kills 26, Israeli tank kills 21, Israeli gunfire kills 31, Red Cross says 21 people were killed in an aid incident, and then, oh wait, they had to correct and take down their entire story, saying we reviewed the footage and couldn't find any evidence of anything. Oh, okay, so we're going to look into reports before we confirm them from this podium or before we take action, and I suggest that journalists who actually care about truth do the same to reduce the amount of misinformation that's going around the globe on this front. John.
About the change in the leadership of the organization, what does that mean going forward, and why so early on is this happening?
What organization?
Humanitarian Foundation.
Well, look, this was a creative idea that the president called for to get aid into the region. These people were desperate and starving, and the president didn't like seeing imagery of that, and he wanted to ensure that aid was brought in with the approval of Israel for understandable reasons. We will never forget the brutal attack on October 7th. And again, this is something that the previous administration was unwilling to put the time and effort into doing. Yes. I can answer that, but go ahead, Ed.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Caroline. So a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson today said that the U.S. imposed harmful measures like new chip controls and pledging to revoke Chinese student visas. So are the Chinese the victims in this trade back and forth?
Look, I don't think anyone is the victim. These are two strong countries. And as I said, the president has a good relationship with China's president and leader. And that discussion will take place later this week.
And what other authorities is the president looking at for tariffs should the decision in the appeals court not go his direction?
Well, right now, his tariffs remain in effect. We spoke at length in my briefing last week about that decision that came down from the International Trade Court, which has been put on pause because the president absolutely does have the authority to implement tariffs and to declare a national emergency for our crippling trade deficit. He could always have the power to use Section 202 or Section 301 as well to impose tariffs if he deems necessary, especially Section 202 tariffs, which are sectoral, as you know, to protect our critical supply chains here at home.
Thanks, Caroline.
You're welcome.
You've got U.S. business leaders begging for certainty. So why did the president suddenly decide to hike tariffs on steel and aluminum again?
You also have U.S. business leaders begging to meet with this president and begging to come to the White House to talk to him because they know that he is a negotiator in chief, that he's making good deals on behalf of the American worker and the steel worker, in particular when it comes to the steel and aluminum tariffs, which he discussed in his speech at length at Pennsylvania and the need for them. And I would just add, I was at that speech on Friday with the president, and there were 2,000 steel workers and their families in the room, many of them wearing their hard hats. I spoke to one backstage who said this is the greatest thing that has happened for that community in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 60 years, because this is a president who doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk too, and he's delivering on his promises to bolster our steel and aluminum industries in this country and to protect those jobs. If not for this president, that steel plant in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania would have closed. Those jobs would have been lost, and the president saved that company, he saved those jobs, and he's saving that community, and that's the intention of the steel tariffs, which he will sign later this afternoon. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you later.
Friday for She, do we think?